presidential elections, but it is making, results rather, but it is making headlines on the dailies this morning. What's more concerning is that there is conflicting accounts of human rights groups saying 24 people have been killed by bullet wounds in confrontations with the security officers. But we had Acting Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i come out and say only 4 people have been killed, and out of those 4, 3 of them were thugs. Your thoughts, first of all, on those conflicting accounts?
First and foremost, I think the acting Interior CS needs to be honest with Kenyans. He needs to be sincere. I think that he needs to honestly give Kenyans an opportunity to be able to speak out.
Right.
Because, elections are very emotive issues. And I don't think it would be right for, especially in a contest where you have almost half of the country contesting this kind of the process. Secondly, this number is expected to go up because, for instance, last night I sent a friend of mine to the referral hospital in Kisumu.
Right.
And from the registry, actually there are about 27, and this is saying 24. This is national, but Kisumu alone is 27.
Right.
And thirdly, the CS knows very well that prior to the elections, there were certain parts of the country that were more or less earmarked as hotspot zones.
Right.
And that NCIC and different other reports, including our own organizational report for county election preparedness, presented about 23 counties that were expected to be hotspots. And so we therefore expected that security measures were going to be beefed up in those areas, but not necessarily to be able to have citizens or common, wananchi engaging with the police to an extent where then you have the police shooting on people, because it is not right. I think as per Article 4 of the Constitution, it's not right to just shoot people aimlessly, because then you take away their right to life.
Right. And the police brutality is one thing, but was it in order, in terms of communications, communication and informing Kenyans? For the acting Interior CS, but we've also seen police spokesman Charles Owino take the same stance. Was it in order, especially in the age of social media, where a lot of those things really cannot quite be contained in a particular area? We've seen pictures making rounds, many of them, of course, difficult to verify, but it is out there on social media.
Yes, and that also presents the issue of factuality, because some of the photos are of course, not Kenyan photos. Like I have a friend of mine who sent me a photo of an accident that took place in Tanzania.
Right.
And, yet Kenyans are saying that people are being, killed in Kisumu. And so I think that insofar as, yes, there is right to communicate through social media, but I think that as Kenyans, again, because Kenya is our country, and we will not sit back and watch the country go down through different communication, which is not very cohesive insofar as bringing us together is concerned, because this is the most important time when Kenyans now need to begin to move forward, because the country needs to move forward. So again, those who are sharing communication through social media, just be responsible. Ensure that what you are talking about is either something that you know very well that is happening because you have been there, you have witnessed it, or you have a credible source of information, because otherwise we'll continue to see tension heightening and of course people getting worried and concerned. And what the security infrastructure will be able to do will be to respond, insofar as the CS is saying that the police are not supposed to shoot, but we are of course seeing them shooting, which I don't think is right, because those police officers are also Kenyans, and it is therefore their responsibility to be able to engage with Kenyans like brothers and sisters, like mothers and fathers, like like relatives, because the country has to move on.
But of course we had Matiang'i there saying, anybody who gets in the way of the police, ataona moto. Let's take a look at page 2 of the Standard there. Girl, 9 years old, killed by stray bullet as violent protests take over Mathare and Huruma. This is a girl who was killed by a stray bullet while playing at their home on the balcony. And we have several more such stories on the second page, or third page rather, of the Sunday Nation this morning. Girl, another one, 10 years old, killed, among people killed in protests rather. And we've had many such heartbreaking stories. A pregnant woman shot dead shared in Migori. I mean, where does the buck stop in terms of, when in the police service, in the security service rather, they are taught action and reaction should be equal. Where does the buck stop when it comes to cases of police brutality like this? We've seen the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights come out and speak out, but who will take responsibility if the top bosses of the security services have refused these claims?
Yeah, and we have these reported cases, and we also have unreported cases, like this young boy who is lying at Kisumu Hospital, who is 5 years old, So where does the buck stop? 3 levels, in my view. The first level is, of course, the security level, because when we have young Kenyans who are supposed to be defending their future, people who are supposed to, you never know whether this lady would be the first Kenyan president, I mean female president.
Right.
And when her life is taken off like this by a person who should be there to be able to protect, because when you talk about stray bullets, yes, of course, action, reaction, but at what point do you use live bullets on citizens? So yes, of course, the first level, in my view, is the security infrastructure. The second level is the political level, which is now the political leadership. And at this point, of course, it is worrying many Kenyans that the main opposition leader is very silent and is not saying anything. But yes, of course, this, as we rightfully said when we began, elections are very emotive, and you expect that Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga needs time to reflect and to think. But remember that he has 6 million plus people who voted for him, and people who are hoping that just a word from him would really make a very big difference. And therefore, it's upon the president-elect, Uhuru Kenyatta, to also reach out. Yes, I was at Bomas and I listened to what he said, but in my view, I don't think that is enough. He needs to really find out where is Raila Odinga and how can I be able to reach out to him, even probably meet with him, face to face and shake hands, because we have seen this country really move on when President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga meet, even in funerals, and they shake hands, and you will see people really jubilating.
It also would be a good sign for their supporters, to see these people okay, they're shaking hands. And interesting to see the situation at Bomas just before the election results were announced. I mean, those who were there, like you, could attest that we had, Jubilee members of parliament and opposition members of parliament sitting together, cracking jokes, hugging each other, even, when they knew the surrounding circumstances.
Yes,
so it is important for Kenyans to see that. But on page 4 and 5 of the paper, still more stories of police brutality, Kevin. And here is a story of a 6-month-old baby fighting for life in hospital after a brutal attack by police. But the interesting twist to this is that reports indicate she was hit on the head by police who broke into her parents' house in Nyalenda Estate while pursuing protesters. Now, once again, top officials have denied these as rumors and lies, but we are receiving reports that security officers in these regions, in Kisumu and Nyalenda, are breaking into people's houses, dragging them out and torturing them. We don't know how true these claims are, but the victims themselves are describing these situations. How would you describe such a situation, first of all?
This is wrong. It is evil, it is demonic, and it is unacceptable. In fact, I want to appeal to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, to really come out strongly and be able to, once these police officers have been identified, they must be prosecuted, because we cannot have police officers who are meant to protect innocent lives being the ones breaking like robbers, breaking into people's homes to go and attack. And there are even cases like the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights report indicating that police officers are threatening Kenyan citizens with rape, and asking them, rather soliciting money from innocent people. These are thieves, in my view, because it's only a thief who breaks into someone's house to be able to, either pick or demand for whatever you want to pick. Right. So I think this is not right, because it is the responsibility of the Kenyan police to defend the lives of Kenyans. And when it gets to this point, when we are having this kind of brutal attacks against innocent citizens just because of an election, it is not right for any Kenyan to die because of an election. So I think that various institutions must take responsibility to be able to identify these police officers and charge them for these heinous acts, because it is not right.
And of course, a lot more stories coming out. On page 5 of the paper, there's Matiang'i says police did not shoot any peaceful protester. Once again, action and reaction, any peaceful protest, but does the action of those protesters warrant them being shot with live bullets? And that is the question many have been asking, the issue of live ammunition being used on Kenyans. Once again, the CS, Fred Matiang'i, has dismissed these as rumors. Who is to protect these Kenyans who are going through these things? I mean, where are they to report such incidences, first of all?
In the past, we have seen police officers engaging with citizens under very terrible environments, or rather instances, like in the 2007, when we saw this police officer engaging with rowdy young people, and you could tell that there was going to be something very serious. But ultimately, when the conversation was over, the dialogue was very able to sort out the issue and the situation. And those are some of the best stories, the successes that I think that the Kenya Police Service right now have the opportunity to present the picture of the police to Kenyans. Because you also note that we've had lots of reforms in the police service which are undergoing. And one of the biggest challenges towards security and police service and citizens in Kenya has been citizen attitude towards the police. And these kind of instances, therefore, really aggravate that kind of negative attitude. And you see a lot of disruption between the police and the citizens. And so I think that the CS really needs to engage with this, because the Kenyan police service is one that is really well structured, even up to the village level. You have NIS, those intelligence service officers, you have the administration police, you have the chiefs and the ward village, administrators and all that. There's a way in which they can be able to get information. And if citizens are sharing this kind of serious stories, because no one is saying anything good about the police, and this therefore means that Kenyans are looking forward to that hand that is going to pick them, and bring them to a level where they can be able to not only present their stories in a manner that they can be heard, but that they can also be able to just vent out. Because as we've said, elections are very emotive issues, and let people just vent. But again, we need to take note of those who are breaking into people's shops and those who are looting. Because again, if you're out there to peacefully demonstrate, and then you are seen breaking or burning someone's petrol station, like what happened in Bondo, Siaya County, terrible things are happening. But I think that it's really upon the police to be able to engage in a peaceful manner, in a manner that the citizens can be able to protest peacefully. And I heard the CS talking about that, but still it is wrong for any police officer to shoot any Kenyan, whether old, young, or youthful.
And many times you speak to police officers, they tell you these are the actions of a few rogue police officers and should not reflect on the entire police service. And we're not trying to vilify the police. There was more than, 180,000 police officers sent out to all the 40,000 plus polling stations. And like I mentioned earlier, relative calm has been reported in most parts of the country. So police did do a good job in terms of maintaining security. But on page 12 of the paper here, NASA leaders tell their supporters to keep out of harm's way. And this has been another debate, as to if the police are going to use excessive force, do not take to the streets, in whatever circumstances, save except for the allegations of police breaking into people's homes. What do you make of, NASA leaders coming out to say this just yesterday, of course, condemning the police brutality, but asking their supporters to keep out of harm's way? Here, we see a picture of James Orengo, who just 2 days ago said, they will not be going to court. They're still brainstorming on their next step, but they will be leaving this to the court of the people. Do you think his utterances then might have been misunderstood by the supporters?
And which is where we have the biggest problem. Because, this is a political leader who is speaking. And you note that prior to just a few months before the elections, we had a lot of peace work going on, and people were preaching a lot of peace. Civil society organizations like ours were all over, running around the country talking about peace and asking people to go and vote peacefully. Yes, we went and voted peacefully, and then everyone has gone back and locked themselves into their houses, and they are so scared, including peace actors and stakeholders are supposed to be out there. So the politicians have now taken over the stage, and it is really up to them and upon them to, and they are having fun to be able to communicate to their followers whatever information and in whatever language which they want to use. And so this, therefore, is an opportunity again for the peace actors, in my view. And I want to appeal to the so many organizations that engage in peace activities and peace building processes and cohesion issues. Even NCIC, we have not heard of a single statement from the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Yet before the elections, they were so all over talking about Kenyans, you must go and vote peacefully. But yes, Kenyans woke up at 2:30 like myself, who was doing observation, and several others, all over the country. And why can't we see the same messages now coming out and people just being there to ask Kenyans to be responsible? But of course, politicians and aggrieved people like James Orengo and NASA leaders will be able to now take this very platform and now this very opportunity to engage with their followers. And there are so many, like we have seen. 6.7 million people is not a small number.
Right, that's half the country.
Exactly.
But it's great that you mentioned that you're one of the observers in this election, because the issue of observers, has been one that has been questioned, especially foreign observers coming into the country. It would be great to hear from a local observer as to your thoughts on how this election went. Do you agree with the majority of the observation groups that this was 100% free, fair, and credible?
I wouldn't say 100%, because, for instance, where I voted, the system refused to work. I was a second person because I needed to therefore vote and then go out and continue. So as observers, and I went to my village where I am a registered voter, and I observed 17 stations, and in 4 of them, the system just failed to work because, in fact, at some point we had the PO, the presiding officer, asking neighbors to call the people who then voted, like myself. I was called back to go and be able to again to identify myself. Now, what this means to me is, of course, the infrastructure of election preparedness. But yes, the question that begs is, what is free, fair, and credible? And in another part of the country where I was so impressed by the voters who just stood on the rain, and they were being rained on, and they were saying, tutangoja mpaka mvua ishe, hatutatoka hapa mpaka tupige kura yetu. And then I asked many of them, so to you, what is free, fair, and credible? And they said, Kevin, in my view, free, fair is what I am doing right now. But credibility is when it gets to Bomas. What will happen at Bomas? So in the hearts and minds of many Kenyans, free and fair means that, yes, the platform is very standard for all the candidates. Even citizens are able to come and queue. But to them, credibility now is in the process that Kenyans had been waiting for all these 4 days, that they are able to, receive the results, to count them effectively, to tally them, to verify them, and ultimately be able to make an announcement. So in the mind of a local observer like myself, and the beauty of it is that I'm also a Kenyan, and so I understand the political history of this country very well, much more than many of those international observers. In fact, in my view, I don't think that some of the international observer groups, rather missions, did their research on Kenya effectively. And for instance, to quote the Secretary John Kerry, I watched his press briefing, and I thought that some of these comments were uncalled for, because Kenya, given the kind of history that we have come as a country, we need people who will come and speak to us messages of cohesion, messages of let's work together, we can do it together, we are one people, we are one nation. But when you begin to say that a political leader who has 6.7 million Kenyans, half of the country, has the power to do whatever he wants, and he has freedom to go to court, and Kenya has institutions. Yes, we are a growing democracy, we have very good institutions, but these institutions are being tested, and institutions are there for people to make choices, whether you want to go to court. We can have a disagreement between you and I, Michelle,
right.
But it's really upon us to agree whether we want to deal with it as you and I, or we want to have a mediator, or we want to go to the courts. So yes, of course, elections were free, fair, but credibility is still something that I believe that even scholars who probably are watching this interesting dialogue can be able to begin picking Kenya as a case scenario, as a case study on what exactly is credibility in elections, and what elections are credible, and what are the measures or indicators of credible election.
Right, and we'll be discussing that in just a moment. Kevin Osido is the Executive Director at the County Governance Watch. You're watching Kivumbi 2017 Weekend Edition. We're taking a look at what's making headlines on the dailies this morning. Matters, peace and unity taking center stage, even as President Uhuru Kenyatta in his acceptance speech said national unity would be his maiden call. Let's take a short commercial break here on Kivumbi 2017. When we come back, we continue this conversation. We'll also be sampling your thoughts and comments on the hashtag Kivumbi 2017. Do stay with us.